As Donald Trump does his best to denigrate the press tonight in what is now past, I believe, or coming close to passing the hour mark, I think it's important to remember just how important he himself has made the press, even when it comes to just understanding basic facts. I mean, earlier this week, Trump attended the dignified transfer of 4 U.S. service members who were killed in the war with Iran. They brought the total death toll of U.S. service members killed in Trump's war to 18. But the day after that dignified transfer, the website the Pentagon reports casualties on had lowered that number to just 14. On Wednesday, it said 18 people had been killed in this war. By Thursday, it said 14. Now, the Pentagon's acting press secretary attributed the change to just a temporary data disruption and suggested that it would be quickly fixed. As of tonight, those numbers still do not appear to have been fixed. And now, if we don't have a robust press corps, we probably wouldn't know about the story to begin with. But we certainly wouldn't know this because the 3 military officials told the New York Times that one of the reasons the death toll got lower was because the Trump administration decided to remove 4 service members killed this past weekend from the list because their deaths occurred after Trump declared a ceasefire in the war in April. Think about that. 4 U.S. service members were killed because of Trump's war of choice. But the administration has reportedly decided not to count their deaths in the war's official death toll. I mean, it is giving me, it's infuriating. It's also giving me flashbacks to the beginning of the COVID when the number of people testing positive for the virus was making Trump look bad. So Trump's solution was to try to get everyone to stop testing. Over and over again, he has tried to hide the truth rather than face it. But luckily, the press corps hasn't let him get away with it. And I think there's increasing pushback, as we've been talking about. Joining me now to talk about this longtime and legendary Pentagon correspondent, Barbara Starr, and retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. Thank you both so much for being here. Barbara, let me start with you. I mean, you have covered the Pentagon for decades. How unusual is it to see something as basic as the official number of American troops killed in a war suddenly changed, and then hearing conflicting explanations from the Pentagon and military officials about why it happened?
Well, it's the conflicting explanations that really are so disgraceful. A data problem, a problem with the database. If there was a problem with a DoD database about soldiers, troops killed in action, and the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, wanted it fixed so that the database would be accurate, all he has to do is call his aide in and say, get this fixed and get it fixed now, and it would be. And by all accounts, he has not done that. If this is because there was a ceasefire and, they weren't killed in combat in the war against Iran, what a load of nonsense. And it is General Hertling, I am sure, can tell you much more about this than I can, but I can tell you it is a fundamental pillar of the American military and American life forever that the United States acknowledges its war dead and acknowledges them with full candor. He can move them out of the database. I can tell you the sacrifices they made will not be forgotten.
No, disgraceful is, I can't think of a better way to describe it. But General Hertling, let me turn to you. If those casualty numbers are being changed, or even if there's confusion about them, what does that mean for the men and women serving, for military leaders, and especially for the families of those service members, and frankly, the families of service members who are now out there fighting in this war that they still don't have an explanation for the purpose of?
Well, Jen, I'll talk about the leaders first. You know, when you're a military commander or any kind of leader, one of your first obligations is to account for your people. Those serving, those who are in different places, and especially in combat, those that are wounded, missing, and killed. Long before statistics are compiled back in the Department of Defense, something called a casualty feeder report, the military commanders owe accounting to the families, as you just said, to the force, to their fellow soldiers, and to the nation. None of this is politics, it's military ethics. And the fact that this occurred over the last couple of days, I find reprehensible, because they were initially reported on that casualty feeder that was on the DoD website 2 days ago, and then it suddenly came down. It's been down 2 days. I just checked it just a few minutes ago. And as Barbara just said, if the secretary wanted to fix a glitch, a temporary data disruption, he could do it in a nanosecond. So it hasn't been done. I think we're playing politics, and that leads to a second issue. And it shouldn't be an excuse, but truthfully, it becomes an issue of trust. And trust is a strategic resource, more so than some of the other things we do. Any democracy asks extraordinary things of their young Americans. It asks them to accept unlimited liability, and in return, the government owes complete honesty. And that's where we're falling short right now. There is very little candor about the war. There is very little candor about casualties, equipment losses, damage to bases, and all the other things that, as a commander in combat, and Barbara pointed to me because she visited me in combat a couple of times with her news organization, she saw how draconian we were on certain things, and casualty reporting, not just killed in action, but wounded in action, very seriously injured and not as seriously injured, died of non-battle wounds like accidents or aircraft having damage. All of those things are accounted for, and a commander is responsible for it at every single level.
Barbara, this discrepancy only came to light, I mean, because reporters noticed the numbers as they kind of culled through the data, which is interesting. I mean, we've talked before about how even though there's this effort to not do Pentagon briefings, they haven't had one really since early May, if I'm getting my numbers correctly here. The efforts to crack down, the lack of disclosure of information. There is still excellent reporting being done, of course, because there's excellent reporters covering the Pentagon. What do you think this tells us about that and how that's all going?
Well, and again, this is a week when we saw the courts lead the Justice Department to withdraw subpoenas against New York Times reporters as part of an alleged leak investigation. We continue to see the administration go after the media time after time after time. And I have said, and I really believe this, I really do, right from the beginning, for those sitting in the back not paying attention, listen up. The American news media is not going anywhere. It will continue to do its job. It will continue to report on the government, on those who serve, how taxpayer money is spent, and what the government is doing. This still is a democracy. Someday, Pete Hegseth is going to be out of office, and things hopefully they'll change before he leaves. But the life will move on. And in the meantime, the American news media not going anywhere, continuing to do its job against all of the threats, the intimidation, the accusations, the insults thrown at it by everyone from the president to the Secretary of Defense. It's ridiculous, and it's not going to stop American reporters from reporting on this government.
Let me ask you, just to that point, Lieutenant General Hertling, I mean, there has been obviously a bunch of reporting about this Qatari jet, and we all watched as Trump did not take the plane back. One of the New York Times reporters who reported that story were issued subpoenas. There were subpoenas issued against them. There was a new story today, I should note, new reporting tonight from the New York Times, that Donald Trump abruptly switched from the Qatari-donated Air Force One to the older presidential aircraft while leaving Turkey after U.S. officials judged there to be a credible threat from Iranian proxy forces targeting the president and his plane. We could all see with our eyes, and also from reporting, what the plane may not have been equipped for. But what does that decision tell you about the seriousness of the threat? To the degree you have an assessment of that, what do you make of it?
Well, the Secret Service and the Air Force takes every threat as serious. There are no, hey, this is non-serious, we can risk this, or this is serious and we've got to do something about it. Anytime there is a threat, no matter where it comes from, they address it and they do risk mitigation. So everything, when you're talking about basically taking care of a principal, in this case, the president and everyone else that rides on Air Force One, you take it seriously until you either confirm or deny the threat exists. So, yeah, you can't hedge on this, Jen. They have to do something about it. But again, it was the way the president treated it. When the day that he took the old Air Force One back and it was announced that he was going to send the new one, the Qatari jet, to England so that soldiers could see it, man, I try not to use profanity when I'm doing military analysis, but the only thing that came to my mind was that's bullshit. I mean, it's obvious that it's BS. The military teaches leaders about both success and failure and how to handle it. They also teach them accountability, accounting, and responsibility. And that's not taking place right now. There's very little candor, and there seems to be a lot of walls being put up to prevent the truth from coming out.
Sometimes you just got to say BS and say the actual words, and I'm here for it. I'm so grateful to you both. Thank you. I mean, the role of reporters and journalists on a night where the president just spoke for over an hour and donned a Trump 2028 hat at the very end is an important part of the story. And there's so much excellent reporting that's still happening. Thank you both so much for being here with me tonight.
Thanks, Jen.